Hello and welcome back to my Flashy Flamingos coloring tutorial. This is part 2 and I will continue where I left off using my Polychromos pencils, though I'll be adding a few more pencils and pens to the mix as I go. This coloring page is a very long process in real time because I use lots and lots of layers and I do a bit of blending and burnishing. So I'll be speeding up parts of the video and then slowing back down again when there's something I'd like to point out. So let's get started. So to make the eyes stand out a little bit more, I'm adding more layers of green, and then I'll burnish the eyes with my Blender Bright. One reason I like to burnish certain areas of my colorings is that it gives a nice smooth surface for using my Pitt pens. Because the surface becomes sealed more or less, my ink and gel pens are a lot less likely to bleed out into the paper or get fuzzy. I can usually get much sharper lines when I burnish an area first. So that's one of the benefits. So, like I mentioned, burnishing with a Blender Bright stick can make your surface pretty slick. So, sometimes it can be tricky to get your ink to flow and adhere to the surface of your paper. So, make sure you brush any crumbs or debris off the area you're working on before using a pen. And you might have to scribble your pen on a scrap of paper a few times just to make sure the ink is flowing properly. Oh, and while we're talking pens, always store your pens horizontally, because of that thing called gravity. Pens stored vertically will dry out so much faster than pens that are stored horizontally. So it's always good practice to get into. Oh, yep. I was a little impatient here. I didn't let my ink dry all the way and it smudged while using the Blender Bright. But I'm not going to panic. It's not ruined. I'm going to try and use my Perfection eraser to see if I can lift that ink off. And I'm just going to gently scrub the area where I blotched. And it seems to be working just fine. And I can cover that back up and blend over it once that ink dries and I can get close to that area again. right, slowly building up my leafy areas. Leaves can be really tedious to color, and I know I put a lot of them in my designs. But once they're all colored, it really is worth the time and the effort. Um, I think the world needs a little more greenery, in my humble opinion. So basically, I'm bouncing between chrome oxide, permanent green olive, chrome green opaque, and earth green yellow. And hopefully, zooming out here and speeding things up a little bit, you can see the overall area that I'm working on and how often I actually move the book around so that I can reach things easily and have my hand in a comfortable position for coloring. Okay, time for a break from the greens. Now I'm working on a few layers of blue violet, red violet, and magenta at the base of the neck. And by the way, if you want to try this design and copy the colors that I'm using here, I don't mind at all. You can also choose your own colors and go in a whole different direction. One of the great things about coloring is that there really aren't any rules when it comes to the colors that you pick and the techniques you use. In fact, sometimes breaking from tradition results in some really beautiful pieces. So never be afraid to experiment and never be afraid to mess up. Most things can be fixed, and if they can't, there's nothing wrong with starting over. I know I've mentioned this in my blog a few times, but some of my best learning experiences came from royally screwing up a coloring the first time, sometimes the second time around. But for me, yeah, I strive to end up with great results. But once a piece is done, it's done, and it usually goes into a folder. So the best parts are in the moment when I'm using my pencils, that cathartic process of layering and blending, getting inspired by the color possibilities, seeing something take shape. And I'm usually listening to something in the background while I work, so that's always enjoyable too. Right now, I'm hooked on the Itchy Boots YouTube channel. It's this Dutch woman, Nora Lee, and she's riding her motorcycle around the world, mostly in remote places. And it just makes me happy that the world isn't as scary and dangerous as the powers that be make it out to be. She has some pretty amazing adventures, and there are some tough times for her, but she gets through them, and it's just really cool. And the scenery is just amazing. Anyway, pure inspiration. Alrighty, time for a little buff titanium. Do a little bit of blending here and squish all those colors together. I want these shapes to pop a little bit and give them a little more definition. So before I come back to do the final burnishing of this area, I'm going to use a sharp lapis pencil to go back and trace over and enhance the original lines. Part of the reason I like coloring on gray line designs as opposed to, the real dark black lines is that it's easier to redefine those lines with whatever colors I like, and I think it just adds a little more interest to the piece. You might notice that I rotate my pencil quite a bit, especially when I want to have a sharp point. Just turning that pencil fairly continuously helps give more even wear on the tip of the pencil and helps keep it a little bit sharper. So as you're coloring along on any coloring page, piece of art, there's nothing wrong with adding your own details to a piece just to make it more uniquely your coloring. So you'll see a lot of times I add extra lines, little shapes, circles, squiggles, what have you, just to give a little more visual interest to a piece. And it's kind of fun. So the neck area is pretty close to being done. I still need to work on some areas. But now I'm going to start moving into the body of the birds. So these will start taking shape as we move along here. Okay, and so to give these feathered areas or petals, whatever you'd like to call them, a little more form, I'm using a darker pencil, terracotta, over the yellow, just close to the base of each petal or feather where it comes out, just to make it look a little more dimensional. And now I'm going back again with the same terracotta pencil and applying a little bit more pressure right in those base areas of these feather petals. I don't think I listed earth green, number 172, in my list of colors below, but I'll be adding this into the mix as well. Now I'm going to use spruce. This is a pretty sharp pencil, just to add a little bit more definition to my greens here. I really love these Tombow pencils for detail work because I can get them very, very sharp, and they are pretty hard. So they sharpen very well, and they also work great for burnishing and blending your colors. In fact, a lot of times I'll use a lighter colored Tombow pencil just to change the tint slightly in certain areas that I'm working on. Heavy hands strike again. So I have not been coloring for that long, a couple of years anyway. And over time, I've learned how to color with a lot less pressure. When I first started out, I used way too much pressure, crushed the tooth of my paper, and it made it really hard to get, a nice variety of layers in there. But I've gotten better about it, but every once in a while, heavy hands strike again, and I break pencil tips quite a bit. So, that's why it's always good to have a sharpener nearby. I always get a little anxious and start burnishing before I really should. But you'll notice when I'm working on this area, I stay away from the areas that I have not put any color down on the paper yet, because once you burnish something, it puts, it crushes the tooth of your paper, and it puts a film over the paper as well. So it's hard to add extra colors. So if you do burnish, just make sure it's in an area where it's not going to resist other colors that you want to add. Just a few swipes with a pencil in the right places can give your coloring a little more interest, a little more definition, a little more shape. So, yeah. already time to wrap this one up. I don't want my videos to be too long. They take forever to load, upload to YouTube. Anyway, I will be back in a couple of days with part 3 of the Flashy Flamingo series. So I hope you come back for the 3rd, and thanks for watching today. Bye for now.